Hello everybody, this is Bitcoin Geek and today I want to talk about beyond technical analysis. I usually look at the website and many people talk about technical analysis, which is great. But I don't really find not so many people talking about a little bit more like fundamental or like something other than technical analysis. Well, of course it's included in a technical analysis, but I'm just talking about a little something we need to look for the information outside a price chart, right? And if you're, including myself, if you are looking at a price chart, you may sometimes feel like you are just confined into the price chart and try to just draw the indicators such as like moving averages or like oscillators, but these indicators only gives you the idea what the price is doing. However, it's just like if you think about like a football game, like if you want to know where the this small ball is going to the next location, is when you ask to the balls never gonna give you the answers. What you're gonna do is you may need to look at some sort of the formation of the teams, or like where the field is, or where the weather, what's the weather is always like, or like who is the players and who is the strongest, who is the weakest, and all sorts of the things. Then you might be able to find out where this ball goes to that as a next destination, right? So it's just like a same to the price. If you want to know for the future price, it's hard to identify the price movement based on the price movement. Just like Larry Williams said, he clearly said that it's difficult to find out the price predict the price movement based on the price movement. So it's that simple. So what I want to do today is I have been away from these channels for a while, so I just gives you the very basic, easy, anybody can do sort of free sort of a technique that you might be able to do on the next Bitcoin movement, and which is pretty, you can do it so easily, so free. It's I think it's a better sharing this idea. So if you just can just follow a little step, right? Okay, so what I want to do today is this: trading Bitcoin, identify invisible force within the market. So invisible force, which is the one we just want to focus on. The price chart is okay, but we want to see something behind the scene. What's going on behind the scene, or like under the sea, or what's going to be coming to the next movement, right? That's what we're going to know, what we want to know, right? Okay, so let's take a look at some of the ideas. Right, so anyway, well, limitation within a technical analysis, well, that's fine. It just, that's very regular things. All the indicators that you can pull up from the historical chart or etc. is usually, it's not always, but usually this chart represents averaging out the price, or how the price is away from the average, or etc. It's all based on the price. Technical analysis works pretty well at a certain times, and it doesn't work at a certain time. So we just need to find out, how to combine edges, right? So what we can look at is, I think this is pretty good starting point to look for the sort of a little fundamental, or like a invisible force, which is pretty powerful. So I'm just gonna share some of the ideas. So it's very one of the puzzles, but it works as this is a funding rate. So anybody have heard about a funding rate, right? It's just like an interest rate in a forex market. If you take a look at the interest rate, if you just take a look at the euros or sterling pound or Canadian dollars, what usually happens is when that pairs has got a higher rate of the interest rate, they usually comes with a higher price, because money try to follow the way where gives a biggest yield of depositing money, right? So it's a little different in a Bitcoin market as of 2019 because Bitcoin market is still small. It's not efficient like Forex in some sense. In the other sense, it is very efficient. However, I'm just talking about trading circumstances. So what they are really doing is if you go to like exchanges like Bitfinex or a Pronex, which is the exchange, they offer you sort of a margin trading, right? Margin trading allows you, if you have got, say, 1 Bitcoin within account, margin trading allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin for maybe 3 or 4 Bitcoins or 5 Bitcoins or sometimes 100 Bitcoin based on your one Bitcoin as a collateral, right? When you want to do like margin trading, you need to borrow some Bitcoins or some US dollars from the other players to short sell Bitcoin. So you are expecting that Bitcoin, the price will fall from this point. Say, for example, this is somewhere around 8,000 right now, and you might be expecting Bitcoin may crash down to 6,000. So what's gonna do is you're gonna borrow Bitcoin from other players and go short, right? Then if you're lucky and the price goes from 8,000 to 6,000, you're gonna buy back at 6,000, and the difference of the $2,000 will be your profit, right? So in order to borrow Bitcoin from other parties, you need to pay something, right? There's no free money in the world. So within exchanges, there is a market called lending. So some of the lenders try to borrow Bitcoin at a certain rate, right? Say, for example, maybe 10% for the annual rate or 5% of the annual rate. And lenders is at the same time giving a ask price for what they want to borrow, release their Bitcoins based on their liking. And sometimes, and usually, like if the situation is just like a normal, probably the Bitcoin leasing rate is somewhere around, funding rate is somewhere around 3%, 4%, 5%, maybe 10%. However, sometimes the sort of the funding rate spikes, and spikes goes up to sometimes 100% annual rate, or like 50%, 40%. When it comes to like altcoins, that sometimes goes up to 10,000. You're not gonna believe that, but it happens. 10,000% of the interest rate, or just like if they borrow 5 days, it's gonna be 20% of the fund will be gone. Or that sort of crazy, funding rate spikes sometimes kicks in. So if we look at Bitcoins, this is the example of the funding rate spike. I just pulled it up from a CoinLend. The CoinLend is a sort of the API program that anybody can use for free to lend their Bitcoin. Anyway, well, if they have a historical lending rate of the past, so I just pulled up, and I'm just here is a April 6, 2019, the interest rate, like a funding rate of Bitfinex is 41.3%. So, well, of course, there's a lot of reasons why the funding rate spikes. Sometimes, the Bitfinex bring in sort of the tether issues or sort of the things, and people try to pull the money out of the Bitfinex. That sort of, that's gonna cause a deficit of the supply. Then, the funding rate spikes. Anyway, just leave it for a while. So basic idea is if the borrower of the Bitcoin goes increase, the funding rate increase, because the lender lenders doesn't really fluctuate a lot. There are a certain amount of the lenders within the market. What's going to change is the borrowers. Usually borrowers is this number, but sometimes borrowers just like spikes. And what's going to happen is when everybody try to borrow Bitcoin, the lending rate of the funding rate just spikes in order to match up to their needs to borrow and the lenders matching. So this represents like a Bitfinex BTC was giving a 41.3% of the annual lending rate. That means what we can assume is so many people is trying to borrow Bitcoin from the lenders to go short, right? And a very basic point is when they go into the market, they need to close the market, right? Close the trade. If you say, for example, if you go short for Bitcoin 10 Bitcoins, what you're gonna do eventually is you need to buy back that 10 Bitcoins out of the market. This means if the funding rate spikes, so many people borrows Bitcoin desperately to go short because anybody thinks that Bitcoin will drops down. And these things usually happens after the long period of downtrend and the price moves up. What people usually think is, oh, this is the perfect timing to go short Bitcoin because Bitcoin will go zero. And what if that case happens, people just you try to borrow the Bitcoin whatever the cost is, sometimes paying 100% of the annual rate. Well, that's fine because if just 100% of the annual rate doesn't mean 100% a day, just maybe 0.3% per day, which is it's not a big deal for for if the price really goes down. However, if that sort of market is a little ironical type of a thing. If people if anybody goes short, that means not so many shorting rooms left. Or what's gonna happen is if so many people within the margin trading go short, that means so many positions are there that requires to buy back, right? Eventually. So if people go short Bitcoin somewhere around $5,000, well, let's just take a look at another slide, right? Okay. So anyway, why funding rate matters? That's because this represents how the people shorting Bitcoin. Well, that's basic idea. If the people borrows Bitcoin very heavily, then funding rate spikes, right? Okay, so let's just take a look at one of the example, which was back in April 6, 2019. I think this was a perfect example. Well, the Bitcoin situation was like all the other assets like WTI crude oils or like SP500 was recovering from the bottom after December 24th, 2018. I believe that was the very bottom. And other assets just was recovering. However, only the Bitcoin was ditching and ditching and ditching and ditching. And so everybody's mindset, pretty much the majority of the participants' idea of the Bitcoin was, oh, Bitcoin is going to zero, right? So after the very long period of time, the downtrend was continuous. They went sideways. Then for some reason, well, there's a reason, but I would say just for some reasons, Bitcoin spikes up to $4,000 to $5,000. So for people who thinks that this is gonna go zero, oh, that's a perfect time for short, right? This is well, I mean, we need to go short. Other than that, this is a very, very perfect, 100% chance. That's people was thinking about it. That is why people, try to rush to all the exchanges to borrow Bitcoin and go short, right? So that means then funding rate spike. As a very simple example, I located a stochastic oscillator that usually represents overbought or oversold. Well, of course, I mean the technical indicator oscillator is not really usable within a trend. Usually what you're gonna find out is if the trend is uptrend, you need to find out oversold area to locate a buy spot, and if the trend is down, you need to find out the overbought to locate where to short. Well, that's the basic idea of the oscillator. But anyway, I just gonna leave it to the sideway. And if we just do not think anything other than oscillator is to locate where to go short, where to go long, right? And clearly this oscillator was showing, and this is a place sort of overbought. So if we just looking only for the price chart and oscillator, there may be a possibility that people wanted to go short for the Bitcoin. However, if you look at this funding rate, that was showing the unusual numbers. That was a 41% of the Bitcoin funding rate. So that means so many people were going short, which is accumulating a future buy power, right? And it was just like accumulating so much, next day or 2, 3, 4, 5 days, people needs to buy back. And who's going to pay 40% of the interest rate for a long period of time, especially when you are doing margin trading? If your margin trading is, say, for example, 3 times, the 30% of the 40% interest rate means pretty much 120% because leveraging 3 times, right? So you need to pay 120% for the annual rate, and I don't think that so many people want to, carry that trade for a long period of time, because as the trade goes longer, you need to pay for the funding rates heavily. People went short at this point, having an urgency to buy back when the price drops. And however, price didn't really drop that enough. And what's going to happen after this? The price movement was actually the short cover. Well, short cover represents when so many people are going short, right? And they have a short positions, and at a certain point they need to buy back their positions. And sometimes some people place a stop loss order, which means a market buy order, right? So market buy order is a pretty strong thrust to move the price goes up to the upward. That sort of things really happened at this point, $5,500 area. So that was, well, of course, there's another reasons. I'm just talking about a very simple way. There is another sort of the options, or sort of another things was, everything was combined. So it's not on the funding rate is only the reason, but I'm just trying to do it sort of easy way, just like a model. And so what you need to look at is a pretty much funding rate. And if you're looking at the Bitcoin's funding rates spikes, like I would say maybe 15% or 20% or sometimes 30%, that things means something. That sort of the timing, people are going short like crazy, and that means there are so many positions that requires to buy back. Well, if this was something, if the Bitcoin's holder just selling their Bitcoins to the market, it doesn't matter, because their selling activity is all done when they actually sell the Bitcoin. They don't come back to the market. They don't gonna buy back. However, the margin trading is a different story. If people went short, they need to buy back. And if people, well, of course, it's vice versa. If people buys a Bitcoin like crazy and other funding rate spikes, I'm not gonna talk it within this video, but I mean it's pretty much the same thing. If the funding rate spikes, so many people buy Bitcoin within a margin trading, these position requires to close. That means they need to sell. Yeah. So anyway, it's pretty simple, isn't it? Just go to CoinLand, or like there are other platforms that showing you the funding rate. So well, just take a look at the funding rate of the Bitcoin, and if the funding rate showing a sort of a spikes, well, there is something. So you just need to be careful, or that may be your chance, or that may be something that's you need to be careful, because something will happen. Right, that's pretty much it. I have a Twitter account, so if you just can follow my Twitter account, which is a Bitcoin Geekend, that's gonna be great. And I will just, if this video was helpful or something, just please give me a comment, or just press the thumbs up button or something, so that I can know that, oh, this video is good or something, I need to create another sort of the video, or oh, if this direction is right for the people, then I just can create another sort of this, you know, same direction of the video. So I hope you guys can give me a feedback. That's gonna be great. All right, okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you see you very soon. Thank you. Bye.